My name is Terme Yazarian. I'm the manager of Volunteer Squadron, which is a team at Burning Man dedicated to all things volunteerism and making improvements wherever we find needed improvement. We're collaborating with Marcia and Miranda here for this roundtable. Some of you may have been to the roundtables before, and you know that the topics were submitted to us by you guys in the previous roundtables, but this time we felt like we have some really meaty things to go over, so we kind of collaborated together for those. Before I let my collaborators introduce themselves, I want to just go over a few rules. We have to limit the amount of time we spend on each topic. And boy, is there a lot that we can say. There's a lot that every one of you are experiencing, and every one of us can say a lot more than what is in the presentation. But we do have to limit our time. So after the presentation is done, then we open it up to a discussion. And during the discussion, we ask that you raise your hand. So Rebecca, where are you, Rebecca? She's going to keep track of your hands, and then avoid talking over each other. So it's a good idea to address your discussion to the presenter directly. That way we avoid kind of making a huge, convoluted kind of conversation going in all different directions. So Manea here is our timekeeper. She's the boss of us, basically. When she raises her arm and says, this is it, or gives us a little ultimatum, we know that we need to limit our time, okay? Okay, next page. So before we start, I would like us to introduce ourselves individually, and then we go around the room and we do a quick little introduction. You guys probably have done introduction in other sessions, but it is really important for us to kind of get to know who you are. So as I mentioned, I'm Terme. I basically oversee the support system we put together for our volunteer coordinators at Burning Man. I train them and manage the volunteer squadron.
My name is Marcia Crosby, and I work with 3 different teams: Center Camp Cafe, Arctica, the ice sails, and special events, which is kind of the Bay Area regional. And this is my 20th one. I'm old.
Hi, I'm Miranda von Stockhausen, and I'm on the volunteer squadron. I also lead the VC team for Gate Perimeter and Exodus, and lead a couple of other teams within that department. Great to meet you guys.
Okay, let's start from this.
I'm Maria. I'm the lead extraordinary of Burton. I'm put on the regional now.
Okay. What region is it?
Alberta.
I'm Sheila, and I'm from San Diego, and I'm volunteer coordinating our Utopia regional event this fall.
I'm Dimitri. I'm from Alberta, Canada, also in the League of Extraordinary Albertans, and I lead the decompression event in Edmonton, and I help with our regional as well.
My name is Brian, and I'm currently in the process of becoming a co-lead or a co-regional for Santa Cruz, and also heavily involved in our decompression event in Santa Cruz.
Kevin.
Oh, I don't know. I lost my laminate, so I have no idea.
I didn't even get a laminate, so. So, Caveat a little about yourself.
So really, I don't know anymore. Completely Burning Man out.
Board directors and work with volunteer coordination.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Alicia, and I'm the new regional contact for Monterey.
Monterey, all right.
I'm Fred, Washington, D.C., Figment, D.C., curatorial co-director. There's 2 of us.
Hi, I'm Heather White. I'm with the Burning Man Project program manager, and I work with Rebecca, the volunteer coordinator.
Kember, San Diego Collaborative Arts Project, and board member. I'm Mr. Wahame, a San Francisco filmmaker and a Belgian expatriate. I'm interested in all things underground culture, and I'm currently volunteering to make sure you guys are documented.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move back to that table over there.
Craig Vance, DPW, and I work at the headquarters, so I get the honor to be here with you guys all.
Thanks for being here.
I'm Dave, I'm the president of Playa del Fuego.
I'm Ms. Fidget. I'm also on the board of directors for Playa del Fuego. It's the regional burn for the Mid-Atlantic, so we get everybody, all the great people from Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York, and Boston.
Yeah.
I'm Liz, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and I am completely new to all of this.
Yay,
I'm
newbie.
learning, absorbing, and just I'm getting an awful lot of information to take back to Alabama.
Your role?
My role is community leader at the
Okay.
moment. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
I'm Ghostess Emily. I'm a regional contact with Portland, Oregon, and I also lead their volunteer coordination and hospitality program.
I'm Ava from Austin. I was the volunteer coordinator for Flipside for 2 years, and right now I'm co-directing the Austin chapter of Burners Without Borders.
My name's Arthur. I'm on the board of directors for Javias from Vancouver. So stands for Greater Vancouver Interactive Art Society. Most ridiculous, boring name could have ever come up with. I also was leading the core project last year, and I'm the volunteer coordinator for the core project this year.
I'm Andrew. I'm also from Vancouver. My work's typically been with our regional rangers up there, so I'm always very interested in how we can recruit more people to become rangers. So that's why, and retaining our existing ones.
Wow.
Wrangle, pretty much.
Hi, I'm Obaraj from Tokyo, and I'm a leader of the Burn in Japan next September event, and also I was volunteer of the TEDx Tokyo's volunteer curation, and also the unreasonable artsy, the social entrepreneur volunteer events.
Wow.
But honestly speaking, I've never been to the Burning Man itself, so it's really absorbing events. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm Mary Holt from Sacramento. I help form Sacramento Valley Spark, a nonprofit over there, and it's DPW for Burn the River last year and the year before. It's cleanup for Gold Country Equinox. And I was Countess of Clean for our core project last year.
Wow. Impressive.
Hi everybody, I'm Minea. I'm from San Jose, California, and I am a volunteer coordinator with Playa Info.
Hello, I'm Rebecca, and I'm a volunteer coordinator with Burning Man Project in San Francisco.
Great. So everyone, I will be moderating this discussion. So occasionally I may have to cut you off if I notice that we're going way off topic or if we're, for whatever reason. But generally speaking, I'm going to let our presenters do their thing. Ready?
Yep. Excellent. Hi. I am honored to be talking to all of you about volunteerism because having scribed in 3 sessions just this conference, I have had my eyes and my brain blown open by all of the things that you guys are faced with. And even though this is my 20th burn, I am totally just learning what it is to be global. But I do understand a little bit. A lot of you guys had multiple sort of job titles or roles in your little introduction. Some of you said one thing, but I'm guessing you're kind of like me that you actually have multiple hats. This is the hat for cafe. This is my hat when I'm leading the Arctic and ice sails, and this is my hat when I'm doing special events. So the flipping hats is something I'm really used to doing. But I really do love working with volunteers and finding that thing that really lights them up. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that we've, as a group with the Vol Squadron, collected from our volunteer coordinators about what motivates volunteers, and then I'm going to ask you guys to share those inspiring stories that this brings up for you guys. Speaking of inspiration, I think inspiration and being inspired yourself can really get everybody else inspired around you. I know I've gotten up and felt like I am not fucking inspired, but I recognize I've got that glowing volunteer over there, and I put them with those other people who are also kind of going, So sometimes if you can't be inspired, put an inspiring volunteer in that mix, and that helps a lot. Leading by example is always good. People oftentimes want to join a group and get excited and learn something. A lot of times people volunteer so that they can learn more about something they don't know anything about yet, and they want to join a group. Passion and enthusiasm is kind of an obvious one. I think a lot of these things here are things you're like, yeah, but like, how do you really do something with it? But creativity is, I think, a hallmark of anything in our Burning Man culture. People oftentimes say, well, I'm not an artist, but you give them an opportunity to discover that they can be creative, and it just opens things up for them. I've worked with so many people who are saying, no, I can't be creative, I don't know, but sure enough, at the end of the day, they're like, look what I created, woo! Empowering people to take some responsibility, giving them something, a little piece of something that they can own until you're sure that they can kind of take on more. Oftentimes people really enjoy feeling like, even though they don't have an understanding of the bigger picture, they can understand this piece of the pie that they've been handed. And sometimes it's really also important, and I'm going to jump ahead there, about communicating the why, and not just the how to get there, but the why. And one of the things I've explained to some volunteers when they've said, but this is so inefficient, is pointing out that sometimes we're not really after efficiency as much as we're looking to involve as many people in the process as we can. And I know that may sound kind of like, excuse me, I've got 5 volunteers. I have involved every person in the process that I can, but there's a balance there. But sometimes people don't quite understand that we're really trying to create community in the process of creating the event, and they're just looking for fixing something they see as inefficient. And it can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes you got a little problem volunteer. It can be helpful to pull them aside and have a little bit more of a talk with them and find out what it is that brought them to volunteering. What is it that lights them up? I had someone who was so good at getting projects off the ground and seeing all the parts that needed to go together. He was a project manager in real life, and I was just like, oh my God, do I have to figure out a bake sale to pay him, because he is amazing? And I finally just took him aside and said, what is it that, he's like, I just want to learn how to sew, because part of the stuff that he was working with was people sewing things. No idea that this guy was looking to learn how to sew. So sometimes just peeking into, what is it that they do. On the other side, there's sort of matching skills, whereas someone coming in who's, I am so good with spreadsheets, match them up with the spreadsheets. If that's what they really say they want to do and they're good at it, and their skills match, it can be a great way to sort of empower your volunteer. Then there's the sort of concept of the experience is more valued than the swag sometimes. That's a tricky one. Swag? Okay, first of all, digression. Is it swag or is it schwag?
Swag.
Swag. See, I think of swag, but somewhere along the line I got corrected to swag. I don't know.
Stuff we all get.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Okay. For me, it is the experience. The swag is a little memento of having gone through that experience. I've got a little example here, something. The Arctic crew does something in Seattle, sea compression. I was not here at this. This, to me, is actually an empty piece of swag. To me, the swag isn't important unless you're actually part of it. And I don't mean that they don't love me, and I love that I have this, but look how new it is. Look how unworn it is. It's because I feel sort of like a fake when I'm wearing swag that I didn't actually earn or contribute to. So I personally think it really is the experience, even though, we do see people collecting all of the badges and all of the things and the, laminates. stuff, but, and then there's giving credit and appreciation to people. I think everybody loves to be appreciated. Depending on the context, it can be great to call someone out at the end of the shift and point to them as having done something awesome, but it can be also a little disempowering for those other people who don't get called out. Depending on scale, I sometimes see if I've got a group of 5 people and 3 of them I can totally come up with something, I will call those 3 out, and then the other 2, anything that comes to mind. Oh, and John, thank God John tells all the worst jokes on the fly, you know, anything, you know. Thank God Susie's wearing the most sparkly pants, she's always got the best outfits. Sometimes it doesn't really even matter what you're calling them out for, but you're calling them out by name and giving them some credit and appreciation and making it fun. I think you guys have probably some very inspiring stories that this has brought up for you guys, or other things that you think motivates people, and I would love to hear from it and get some stuff up here on the little sheet that I've started. So, anybody got something they want to share in the realm of motivating volunteers?
I was just going to say on that last little note about appreciation.
Yeah.
Is when I was in education, we had 160 students that we had to recognize for something.
160. Yes.
Not one of those could be unrecognized and not, you know, have the.
This is a wonderful example.
And I can tell you, we were there late at night, what are we going to say about, you know, we put the name in there, or whatever that student was. So, and on that note, is it has to be honest and it has to be true.
Yeah.
And it because the minute that it's not, it's a falseness that they know.
Yeah.
It's just given to them because everyone in the room needs their little star and their little
tiara or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that is something I think would be so careful with making sure that the appreciation is truthful.
Yeah. I have actually done a little trick at a volunteer appreciation party. I've got my whole little stack of note cards, and each little note card's got the person's name and 1 or 2 words, because I need to make sure, oh, yep, Rusty and that thing, and then when I've acknowledged Rusty, it goes in that pocket. I mean, I literally just kind of, oh, who haven't I found in the group here?
Yeah, we didn't use the same thing twice either. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
It had to be original, it had to be about them.
Yeah.
One of the first year I was volunteer coordinator for Flipside, I had patches made that we had designed specially for the event for the volunteers that said, I think they said Whiskey That Bacon, Flipside Volunteer 2011. And I went around on a cart at the event in the early stages, and I hand delivered patches to most of the volunteers. And since it was a small run and there weren't that many of them and they were hand delivered, there's still like some of the most coveted like possessions that crew of volunteers has. Like I have like 5 of them left, and I still have people ask me like, do you still have any of those patches? Like, can I get? And like everybody's got them on like some prominent big place, and it's just something because it was special to and unique to that year. Because we do T-shirts every year, and some of the crews do patches every year. But because it was unique to that event, and because I made a point of handing them out personally and thanking everybody individually and like making a big show of it, it meant something to them.
It sometimes is just about making a personal thank you, looking them in the eye and being genuine. I understand it can be really hard to come up with 160 unique things to thank people for, but if you can really tap into your own source of why you are so grateful, it doesn't necessarily have to be detailed.
You don't
It's
even have
just
to say
being
why.
honest.
You can just
Exactly.
say thank you.
Exactly. I think she was next, but we need to stack a little bit.
Yeah, I'm taking care of it.
Okay, thank you.
Camaraderie.
Camaraderie.
That they see these cool group of people doing something, and whether it's they want to ride around on a golf cart picking up pylons, or they want to wear khaki, they gives them even more of a feeling of belonging within your
Camaraderie and belonging. Good. Very good. Yeah.
Back there, and
So I have a quick little anecdote about swag in particular that worked really well for us last year is, so our team leads make their own swag for their teams, whatever. We have T-shirts for all the main volunteers and that thing, but I want to do something really special to point out the leads and the co-leads. And so I ended up like finding a really good place for pendants, and they're really heavy, and there's actually supposed to be keychains, and they came in little special boxes, and people put them on pretty much immediately. We gave them to them about halfway, during the weekend, about burn night. And And then for months now, I've heard people, anytime they say it, they're like, oh, and they don't know a board member. They're like, oh my God, you were a team lead. What team lead did you lead? And I'm like, oh, board member. I actually did this. Yeah. And so it identifies people that they did something really special. So it's kind of like the limited runs principle. If you have a very certain group of people, the value of that to them goes like skyrockets. And if you have like a very particular group that would really appreciate that, I was really surprised how much people were like deeply pleased about it. It was really nice. So anyway.
What I found from asking the volunteers last year is a lot of them didn't know what they were supposed to be doing, so clearly communicating the job. I think that empowers the creativity. Then what we're doing this year is using social media to create the groups ahead of time so they can Q&A, get to know their teams, and doing meet and greets so they get a face-to-face contact point ahead of time to get excited, to build their creativity, to figure out how to be prepared and really make that job an experience. So I think you nailed all those things. Those are like all the things that literally people are telling me were missing. And I think it's just really important to figure out how they all piece together.
I like your comment about using social media tools to bring together geographically dispersed volunteers ahead of time to sort of meet each other, or at least feel a little bit more of a cohesive group before they sort of land in the, got to get it done.
And again, that's a part of belonging where they feel like they're part of an exclusive group that they get to join because they're volunteering for that.
Yeah, good, good.
And
we're going to run out of space right away, but so specifically to that question, I have a couple. Like one of them is like humor and playfulness.
Yeah.
It's like people. It's so exciting to work on a team where everybody's laughing and joking around, and like things easily roll off people's backs, and like it's a lot of fun. And then the other thing is working on an inspiring team. So especially for like newer people coming in, and they're like, wow, like these people are like, they got their stuff together, and everybody's talking. There's good communication, and like that, like for new people, like this is great. I want to be part of this. And then the other one is like, actually one thing is like, because what you just suggested is, well, there were a couple of new volunteers in our TCOM.
Yes.
And they just kind of went through kind of an entire transformation as part of that process. And the thing that I think that really inspired the volunteers was when at the end we had our volunteer party.
Yes.
And these two, especially, basically they gave feedback and like very positive feedback, and were very vocal about their experience. Oh, I'm sorry. It was basically feedback from people who had a transformation, and positive feedback, and that addressed like how to word it. I guess people like feeling like they have found like kindred spirits. So, or like have kind of brought out something in someone that maybe wasn't there before, maybe they didn't know was there.
Good. It's a tough one to capture.
Yeah. We have 2 more minutes.
2 minutes, yeah.
So more of a question and feedback is, where does a discounted ticket fit into this?
I had on my little list, do I talk about the ticket thing or don't I talk about the ticket thing?
I have a little something in my list, but yours.
Yeah, I think that the ticket thing is kind of tricky. From my experience, volunteers tend to give a lot more time than the dollar value of whatever ticket thing is involved. But I know sometimes it's more about, I hate to say it, it's an analogy to the real world VIP list or the guest list or the special persons list or something. I think that we all have a lot of people in our community who are either struggling to make ends meet or choose to live kind of close to the edge financially. So a less costly ticket may make a difference. And God, I still make it a case-by-case basis for my team. I refuse to create sort of a blanket policy because I think ultimately that's something that you don't want people just doing it for the ticket. And they're just, well, I can't complete that sentence. Y'all.
Okay, we have a hand over there, Miranda, and then you, and we have one over there. So
the way our event handles it is we don't do comp tickets for anyone, not even the board, but we do have reserve tickets because our events historically sell out. There's a lot of competition, a lot of drama, a lot of aftermarket going back and forth. So we've identified key volunteers, obviously the board, rangers, everybody who's involved with safety, DPW. And so each department is responsible for sending us a list of how many people they need on their team. And those people still have to pay for their ticket, but they do it through a separate process where they don't have to be someplace at a certain time and, you know, hope that they have good luck.
Miranda?
Yeah. One of the things that we do, Gate Perimeter and Exodus, is we have to be a little bit more structured because we're a department of 500 people. So we do have to put together some sort of set of expectations. We do have a discount program. We also have a program where you can earn your ticket. And it's levels of commitment that people are willing and or able to get that determines what they're going for. But the expectations are set. People are free to choose at what level they want to play, and then they're rewarded or compensated, or however you want to say it, that way. There's always going to be people who fall on hard times, and they're going to usually come to you at a quiet moment, and you know, but you got to do whatever works for you. And as your events grow, and like we know that all your events are going to grow because it catches like fire, make sure that you try to think of the future when you're implementing your ticket policy, whether you have one, whether you don't, whether you have a low-income thing or whatever, and whether you'll be able to scale that out. Because there's nothing worse than changing the game on people from year to year. And you will hear more about it and spend more time dealing with that than you ever thought. So tread carefully.
Yeah, so similarly, what we've historically done is everyone pays their own way. Event lead, everyone, you pay the ticket price. We do have the low-income ticket program, and obviously people didn't have to justify why do you need a low-income ticket and stuff, what do you bring to the event, those sorts of things, similarly like you'd have to do for the thing in the desert. And so for those sorts of things, it's like, well, hey, I really want to volunteer with this, that, and the other thing is like, okay, well, this person's willing to put in a bunch of time towards helping for the event as their participation. And so quite often that can be sort of one avenue of justifying, including someone in that limited number of low-income tickets. So.
And we had another hand over here somewhere? Yes.
So kind of ours is the strength foundation of both of those. We don't do low income. We also require everybody to buy their tickets. But what we do, because our tickets have been really crisis level lately, is we set aside critical infrastructure. And critical infrastructure is pretty much just team leads. We pay part of our medical team, so they actually don't count in our cap. But it's not any actual volunteers. It's pretty much just leads, and our grants is the other part of that too. And it takes that stress and that anxiety off of them, and they don't have to go through the standard ticket process. And that's been a real motivator for a lot of people because our ticket process is really stressful right now.
Okay. Okay.
I realized that one thing I hadn't quite mentioned was leveling the playing field. We're all leaders in here, and oftentimes volunteers, particularly new ones, really see a hierarchy even if it isn't entirely there. It's not in everyone's personality to be as ridiculous as me, but I can remember one time when things went so ass backwards in the morning, everybody was just like, oh, fuck. I went and put my clothes on backwards, came out and said, okay, well, if it's going to go ass backwards, we might as well dress backwards. Broke the ice. But the other part of sort of leveling that playing field is giving someone an opportunity to contribute to making some decisions or contributing ideas to solving a problem. Even if you don't necessarily take those ideas, having that moment of like, oh God, we're kind of stuck. Anybody got ideas? Or asking a specific volunteer to contribute to a checklist or a brainstorming can really give them a sense of contributing because they were heard. And we are out of time on this section. I could talk forever.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We have a few people who joined us. Can you please introduce yourselves?
Gregory Haley from Dallas, Texas.
Excellent. Thank you.
Darrell Blaine from Washington, D.C., regional contactor, and I run Can't Contact at Burning Man. For a while here.
I'm Holger Lauren. I'm from Dallas, and I am the greeter lead for Flipside.
Okay, great.
And I'm Ann. I'm the gate lead in Portland, Oregon. I've been gate lead since 2008.
I'm Fagan, Vancouver, co-producer for Golden Forest.
And I'm Midnight Elizabeth Laird-Joy. I'm on the board of directors for Transformers in North Carolina.
Okay, and you?
I'm
Joyce. I'm from Sacramento Regional Contact. Also on the board for Sacramento Valley Spark, our nonprofit, and the main producer for Decompression Burn the River.
Great. Thank you guys for joining us. There are some chairs available here, and it would be really nice if some of you could get a little closer so we can have a more intimate conversation. Okay, Miranda?
Woohoo! Hi, everybody. First, I want to say thanks for coming, and thanks for keeping your head clear for our session. I know it's been a freaking tidal wave of information. I'm so glad that you guys all started pitching stuff back to us, because what we're going to do is we're going to roll this in to these notes and then make them available for you. So you've got some stuff to sketch your own notes on, but what we really want to do is hear your ideas so that we can add to what we have here to make this a really meaningful tool for everybody. So please participate. All right, retaining your volunteers. This is something that could be a 4-hour course all in itself. Because we all know it's that special mix, and everybody requires a little bit different care and feeding, and what people feel is worth sticking around for is as varied as there are stars in the sky. So I'm going to focus on some program ideas that you can do low and no budget, acknowledging your crew, empowering your crew, building relationships, camaraderie, regional pride within your areas, getting feedback and listening, and then re-engagement. We'll go into all those, but we'll start first with, I love my Star Wars, so you gotta give me this, all right? So there's so many ways to show appreciation. The main thing is to do it. We all get so busy, so worn out, and by the time the event and or whatever that we are doing is occurring, we're dog tired. Best way to do this is to delegate. If you guys feel like you don't have the time to give your volunteers, get a VC coordinator. Someone who's already probably doing it, the cheerleader of the group, there's one in every crowd. Approach them and ask them what ideas they have. And if you like what you hear, and if they're open to it, recruit them. And take some things off your plate to make sure that you're really treating your volunteers the way they should, because it does take time. All right, so some of the ways you can do it is a crew-only thank you event, post-event. I love the meetups beforehand. I love the Facebook page stuff beforehand. The event laminate. You either love it or you hate it, but how many people here are going to take their lamb and hang it up at home?
Oh, yeah.
All right, me too, although I don't have one.
She was pretty upset.
I was seriously upset.
You can have mine. Flipping tables.
Thanks, caveat. All right, laminates do a number of things. They kind of denote who's in charge so that your participants kind of know who to go to, and they're a great keepsake. Some of the things you can do are things that build each time, like the patch idea, like a pin, like a whatever. And I know that it's swag, but swag sometimes is the silent advertiser, and it's the thing that people have, and sometimes people don't have too many things, but it's the precious thing, right? Okay, anyway. Patch, pin, or button, easy. There's tons of other ideas, and I'm sure you guys can all school me on it. Crickets. All right, recognition and retention. Basically, reach out to your volunteers. Post-event. This is the great thing to do in the quiet time of the year. Split up your crew list amongst whomever, amongst your group, and just call them and say thank you. Say, we rocked it, you were amazing, thank you so much. How did the event go for you? What did you like about it? If you were in charge, what would you change? I mean, as open as you are and as much time as you are, engage them. If you don't have time for a phone conversation with 200 of your people, call them anyway to say thank you, and then invite them to participate in a survey. And just say, I'm going to email you the URL. And ask all those questions in a survey, and SurveyMonkey will actually aggregate the feedback into meaningful metrics that you can actually use to fine-tune things, to fix what didn't work. You may not know it, but graveyard shift meals may have sucked. That's what happened in our department. Sucked, big time. We wouldn't have known unless, but now that we've heard the feedback, and it was one of those little things of a million things, we can do something about it. So it shows them that you care. It also shows them, it includes them in part of the process, that they're important. And when you get volunteers that are feeding back and feel like they're part of the process, guess what? They re-enlist, yeah? Okay, all right, so anyway, the rate the event thing, those are all just potential things that kind of are brainstormy for you to sort of ask things. What's missing on this list?
One of the great things about the post-event survey is it can be anonymous. Sometimes people want to give you feedback, but they don't want you to know it was them. And so, especially if they're complaining about something they may have been involved with, and so that gives them a great way of being able to write things up via a survey without, because they might not want to tell you in a personal phone conversation.
That's awesome. What else?
Another thing, another service besides SurveyMonkey that I found is actually a little easier for cards is Google. Google, if you go out of Docs, if you make a Google form, you get like automatic charts and they're beautiful and you can just screenshot them and post them.
Wow, we're getting lots of nods in the room, so Google. Okay, what else?
Celebration, like celebrate them at the end of all the hard work. I mean,
Totally.
it just kind of falls back into the recognition.
Bottle of bourbon all the way around,
yeah.
shots, we kicked ass, you guys rock. What else? You have your hand up? No? No. Okay.
And one more thing, the other thing we did the past 2 years, people really like to present out Christmas cards because it's kind of on-off
Yeah.
because our Christmas
That's very good.
Holiday cards, yeah.
Holiday cards, and you know, it's usually a quiet time of the year, and you know, it's fun. What else, guys? Have we chewed the fat out of this one?
Oh, we've had volunteer appreciation parties.
Volunteer appreciation party? Yeah.
You know, someplace where, you know, they can bring their kids and their SO.
Yep, I think that's great. Caveat.
I find the key element which can incorporate all of this, any and all of it, as well as more of it, is do they feel like they are part of a community and known by that community?
Yeah.
If they feel like this is a group of people who knows who they are, knows what they're capable of, and that they can make a contribution to or have had an impact on, then they'll stick with you for life. If they see this group of people and say, I've had an impact there and people know it, that's the ballgame. And however you do it, through parties, recognition cards, conversations, but if they can see that they had an impact over this past year and that people know it in some way, know who they are, then you're golden.
Yep.
Pictures posted after the event of them working at the event.
Pictures, photos,
You know,
albums.
with them, you know, maybe tagged on Facebook.
Yep.
Yeah,
Social media.
Yeah, and it's like that kind of recognition, especially if it's posted on the official event page, so they feel like, oh my God, that's me.
That's awesome.
That depends on the volunteers and what they're requesting.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, if you make maybe like a small, kind of like a playful ritual at the beginning or the end, like at your volunteer party, and then bring people
A
together
playful
like that.
ritual. All right, and then over there, right? I'm sorry.
Along those lines, and something I found was important that worked at our North Texas burn was, yes, we have a volunteer appreciation party afterwards, but, after the burn, next day, everybody's cleaning up, I went around and collected all the extra booze and stuff for a volunteer appreciation picnic, so that those people could come out and the event could see, oh, these people made things happen.
I was going to say, celebrating milestones at the event when they accomplish things, and people are like, why are you getting so excited? And then they can see that you've got team camaraderie going on.
That's cool, because you guys kind of segued us right into acknowledging the crew. Thank you for that. Another way you can do that is on your Facebook page, you change your banner, right? And let's say you're recruiting for an event, and let's say that people aren't coming forth. The minute you start putting photos of the people who've raised their hands to handle stuff on the banner of the Facebook page for that event, acknowledging them, letting them know that they're special, and basically putting them in the spotlight, watch out. Your email box is going to flood. Yeah? Yeah? You feel me, right? You guys know this is going to happen. So what are some other ideas with social media? You guys are all savvy. Bring them up. Yes?
I think one thing that they could do that might help them is to actually, if you've got the time, to actually write a letter of recognition to send to your volunteers, to your leads, that they can in turn use in the future. I mean, to have an actual letter of almost recommendation or recognition that that they can potentially use in garnering future whatever is something that they definitely, it shows recognition and shows appreciation and is something that's potentially useful.
I love that. And awesome sauce, Gail.
Throughout the year, I also like to throw socials for any gate people that live in Portland, and I will continue like rolling people that work gate just at Soak, and I'm adding to that people that work gate on Playa, and I get like this awesome cross-pollination between the two, because the people that have just started working gate on Playa, they're like, oh yeah, I will totally come do gate at Soak. I'm like, yeah, you will.
Matriculation. Any other ideas before we move on?
Give them
Caveat.
more responsibility. If there is something that somebody wants to see done or something that they thought wasn't going right, putting them in charge of it, I mean, assuming they're not really going to screw it up, giving them something more to do not only helps you, but is, I find, the ultimate pat on the back and, yes, we believe in you and wow, do we appreciate you.
Did you notice how Caveat used a caveat? Give the job to them as long as you know they're not going to screw it up. Ding, ding.
One of the things that we heard directly from our volunteers was, listen to us and trust us. We know what we're doing.
All right. Excellent. Well, we're going to move on because acknowledging is now turned into empowering. And I think that empowering your crew, there's tons of ways to empower your crew. You just segued us into it. Listen to them, give them a chance. Even if someone's heading for epic fail, maybe you step in quietly and check the process that they're going to use, and then maybe review the process and implant some fail safes into that. But you really got to let people kind of go with it, as long as it's not going to completely crumble everything. Okay, so empowering the crew. Part of empowering the crew is letting the crew know what's going on, because if they're educated, you're empowered. If you know what's expected of you, you're empowered. If you know what the job is and what the end goal is and everybody works towards it, it's awesome. And it's so many times I've volunteered for other organizations and I've shown up and they're like all, oh, I don't know, well, why don't you staple these things? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, but use them to their fullest. I think that there was an idea brought up about skill sets and finding out what people's, oh, that's a different track, so I'll bring it in here. Finding out what people's skill sets are and what they like to do, and maybe start your own database of however you want to track that, so you know, oh my God, we need a welder, so-and-so's a welder, or we need a trailer or someone who owns a truck or whatever, and you can go that way. Okay, let's get back to the subject though. Pre-event meeting orientations with barbecues, getting the social media things set up in advance, a conference call, event check-in, and usually when people come and check in at gate, now there's going to be a sign behind me that says "You kick ass," right? And it's just basically telling, I know. So sweet, so warm and fuzzy. But I mean, just anything, even if it's "you kick ass" on newspaper, it doesn't matter. The fact is the message is there. And when they come and check in with you, you're already thanking them, acknowledging them. That's making for a great relationship. Schedule a before event way it is meeting. That way everybody knows who's in charge of what, who to go for what. They empower themselves, they educate themselves. They know all the details, and so there's no confusion down the road. 5 minutes, thank you. All right. And then ask the people who've been doing this for a while to mentor and train. because that's how you get your future leaders.
Mentorship.
And, yep, and that's how you don't burn out. My favorite picture! Building relationships, camaraderie, and pride year-round. None of this is going to be any surprise to any of you. Socials, monthly meetups at coffee, juice bars, whatever. Barbecue house parties, campouts. And then also another thing to do is to support community events together as burners. Let's say, the creek trail needs to get, moved. Go out in your burner-esque whatever, take a big old picture, for your Facebook page and your website and everybody for his keepsake, and then go and do that. And just build camaraderie. So even if you can't plan all the events to keep all the people in your regions happy because there's something to do every single night, point them to the community and help them engage as groups. Okay, this is the last one. Is this the last one? I don't know. Getting feedback and listening. Basically, that is the key. The survey, callback, re-engagement. Always ask. Are we going to rock the Death Star again this year? Yeah? Right on. Awesome. So you always never miss the opportunity to ask them, you're going to do it again, right? And everybody's like, oh, yeah. Especially when the afterglow is still bright. I think that's it for me. Now, do you guys have anything you want to add? Yes.
No, I just have a question for you. When,
Okay, sure.
when you're in the afterglow and you say you're going to do it again next year, have you found a particular sort of, what's your return rate in general? I mean,
in GATE, we have a 67% return rate.
Oh, wow.
We do.
That's fantastic.
And it's 67% because of a number of reasons. Some people are going off to other parts of the planet. Some people are just not able to go, or they're taking a break or whatever.
That's incredible.
But yeah, and we work hard at that. Yes?
I've got one. Combine your fundraising with acknowledging them and allow them to show off what they do. Like, for some reason, we have a DJ on our team, so at our fundraising, we're going to let him program the music and all, and then we have someone else who does sock puppets. So they're going to be
pairing up people with skills, just like Marcia was saying. Perfect. Oh God, you guys, I don't know. Carme, you go.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Okay, so along with clearly communicating the goal, let the person decide how to accomplish the goal. It's like, give them the what to do, not the how to do it, whenever possible.
Okay.
I've got a question that there's probably no time to answer, or at least I want to raise the issue of the mass movement onto social media. I find that there are at least a couple of incredibly kick-ass rock star volunteers who don't do Facebook. And so I'm very hesitant to move our functions onto social media because suddenly I'm cutting potential rock stars out of the loop, and I really don't want to do that. So it's an issue I put out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody deals with it in carrier pigeon, Morse code. Who's next? Next.
I just had an idea. Like, I've been working with our DPW to recruit, and I put out once they leave the lead, they often can't find them again. Give them a checklist, give them a map of the area. They can do it in whatever order they want. They can come back and even note on the checklist any issues that they had or any feedback when they turn it back into the lead. And they can physically check off and feel like they're accomplishing something as they go.
That's great.
Okay, anyone else? No? All right.
Well, there's a couple things I've done. Particular issue of large group of people leading all these different projects, and the volunteers are like, how many different projects and who's leading what? We have people send in pictures, and in our little shack of where we keep our supplies on the wall, it was kind of like a little org chart of here's the photo, here's what they do, and underneath it was, what would you come and ask me for? What's the most, why would you need to talk to me? Because sometimes the job title doesn't completely explain it, but underneath it's like, oh, if you need to borrow a hammer, a saw, or a drill, I'm the person you talk to. That was actually pretty effective. Another little thing we did for team appreciations, we found embroidered patches were way too expensive. And we hit upon this thing with silk screening a little patch that kind of gets pinned on with safety pins. And in the process of finding a volunteer to help this one person who silk screens, we now have a thing ongoing where people get to learn how to silk screen the patches that are being made to appreciate the same group of volunteers. And they love it because it's kind of a full circle and they're learning a new skill.
So to build on that, you can make out of cardboard a stencil and spray paint if you need to do t-shirts on the cheap or whatever on the cheap. And our timekeeper, beautiful timekeeper, said that's it, man. And it's done, but
May I give us another minute?
oh, okay, one more minute.
You want to finish that?
Yeah, so if you guys have any ideas, you think of stuff, you wake up, bolt upright in bed at 3 a.m. in the morning, oh my God, I gotta tell Miranda this. There's an email on the cover of your presentation. You can send us all your feedback and we would really appreciate it. We'll incorporate all of this into it, we'll post it up, and you'll have the link to it.
All right, so we discussed swag versus swag. Is it succession planning or is it succession planning? However you want to pronounce it, it is necessary. What it is identifying areas of growth and finding the right people who are interested in those areas and developing them so they can take the baton from you and lead the project. So you're always looking for leadership in your team. Even within your newbies, you're always looking for a leader. Succession planning also helps project grow, and you're sharing an idea. We have a tendency to be really possessive with the project, whatever the project is in the beginning, especially because we know we have to have some kind of control. There comes a time when the project is growing beyond our capability, and you have to let go. You have to, at some point, just bring in other people. And that really is sharing a dream, sharing a fantasy in a way. Okay? Why is it so important? Because it helps prevent burnout. It prevents information hoarding, lack of new talent, entitlement issues, and it allows for graceful exit. Okay? Also, it prevents loss of history and brain pool. Okay? We're all relying on volunteers. Volunteer situations change. This one amazing volunteer was taking care of this entire area, and all of a sudden they can't do it anymore. Nobody knows how it was done, right? So succession planning also has to do with documenting and keeping track of growth areas. Next. So there is an actual rotation that is kind of the logical way the process works. You review the plan, if you already have a plan for succession planning, assess your current and future needs, you determine key positions, document roles, responsibilities, and tasks, identify successors, mentor future leaders, evaluate and monitor plan annually. So you're doing this kind of cyclic thing every year. However, as we all know, there's a lot more involved here. And you'll notice that some of the things that really help you plan well for the future kind of overlaps with what already has been discussed in the room. So, next one. When it begins is really when you start. Right from the beginning, you need to think in terms of long term and have a vision, develop a vision for the future of this event. Succession planning and mentorship really go hand in hand. You can't have succession planning within Burning Man culture without mentorship, really. So let's move on. Your priority as a leader is first and foremost to find a second in command. This is something that I train the volunteer coordinators, and this is something that I always make sure they understand, that they are not meant to take this entire weight on their shoulder alone. And that's how you want to think about yourself. The first person in command might be your best friend at the time when you first start, right? It might be a family member who, foolishly volunteered to help you, right? So the first person in command is someone that you need to trust. You know you can rely on this person. Maybe they have the right skills, maybe they don't, but they're there for you. Okay, maybe they can just answer emails for you. Whatever it is, you need to have that person with you. And you don't want to take them for granted. You don't want to assume that they're going to continue on and be in that role, stay in that role. While that person is there, you want to keep an eye on someone who can be a better fit, perhaps, right? And maybe you get lucky and this person is actually the right person for the role. You want to define roles and levels of accountability and ownership and decision making as soon as you can. Okay? Again, we have a tendency to grow organically. We're making decisions on the fly sometimes, right? But you want to keep track of things and you want to kind of write it down for yourself. Create a list of tasks to delegate and make sure you have a timeline for it. So it's not enough just to have a task. You actually want to tell the person when is this due, and you want to schedule a check-in process with them so they don't feel like you just dumped something in their lap, right? Have a training schedule. It takes an investment of time to train your leadership, right? And you're training your volunteers for, you know, whatever tasks that they're doing, but you have to think in terms of how to train your leaders. So you want to invest your time and you want to invest in your leader. Create a role or process for documentation. You may want to have one person who is the documentarist in your team. It may be more than one, you know, but you want to have that person on board. Provide the right tools, kind of goes without saying. Establish a mentorship program for your veteran volunteers. So quite often, when you have people who have been involved with your project for maybe 3-4 years, they kind of are ready to move on, right? Either they want to kind of step down a little bit, or they want to step up a little bit. Or maybe just lateral, you know, movement, maybe move to another role at the same level of decision making. You want to make this possible for them, and you want to take advantage of the knowledge that they have and allow, kind of create a mentorship program for them so they can get involved and kind of see themselves in that role and kind of feel more accountable. Okay? During the project, be inspired, you guys. If you're not inspired, if you're not excited, you're not going to have people who would want to continue working on this project, right? So often, I mean, I think that being inspired is one of the really main reasons where people kind of feel like, yeah, I want to be a part of this. And then another one is when you're holding on too tight to a project, they're like, I really wish I could be involved with this, but it doesn't look like there's room for me, right? Give up the ego.
Yep.
This is huge, you guys. I know you feel a great sense of attachment to the project. You may even have a great sense of attachment to a certain role that you kind of have developed for yourself, but you want to kind of give up the ego and make yourself approachable and be available and think of yourself as a mentor. Evaluate skills and recruit leadership. Of course, along the way, you're going to find people who bring you those skills. You want to ask them if they want to continue on, kind of if that's the skill that they want to offer you. Really, don't assume that because they have a skill, that's what they want to do, right? Find out what motivates your volunteers. Again, really, really important. I think Marcia brought this up. When we start volunteering, we're all heart and excited and we really want to give it all. Before you know it, you're deep into it, right? You've probably overcommitted yourself and you're just, you know, so excited. You have a new community, this is a really exciting project going on. A year or two later, you've developed really beautiful relationships. You feel responsible to your community, but maybe something in your life has changed and you can't really give as much, or you're not interested in giving the same way that you did before. Your volunteers, as well as yourself, need a little bit of a check-in time to know what it is that is motivating them now, in this moment. And you as a leader need to be aware of these changes and be aware of what is motivating them, really. Match tasks with interests. Guide your leaders along. Again, don't make them feel like you just kind of gave them this thing and you're counting on them to take care of the whole thing. Take it step by step. Share the big picture regularly. Something that happens a lot when you have a really cool project and a core group kind of develops around it, a subculture develops, right? And that is an incredible thing when it happens. You want that in your team. That can be a little intimidating to your newbies. It can also be you can develop a bubble in your project when people are not really seeing where they fit in the bigger picture, right? So you're the one who needs to share that all the time. Team up veteran volunteers with newbies. Again, you may want to consider having a welcome wagon for your newbies. You want to acculturate your newbies as they come in. And it shouldn't be just you doing all the work all the time. You have a bunch of people who are experienced in this, and you want to kind of take volunteer newbies in under their arm. Okay, I need to talk really fast now. Have an evaluation process, you guys. Just because you're dealing with volunteers, especially when you're thinking in terms of leadership that you want to count on a long-term relationship situation, you want to make sure that there is a system of accountability. So just because they're volunteers doesn't mean that you can't hold them accountable, but they need to know what that is. They need to know what the level of accountability is. Establish an exclusive feedback process that allows both your newbies, older volunteers, and your leadership to send you feedback. You're going to get different quality of feedback from these two different groups. Recognize the level of burnout in yourself and in your team. This is really important. A lot of times your team leaves, and especially your leadership, because they have higher sense of responsibility and accountability. They leave because they're just burned out. They need some time off. So you need to kind of look at the process, pick the time when you can actually use as a slow time, as a kind of decompression time, and make that okay for people to kind of go offline, maybe. Further define roles and expand your delegation list. This needs to be on an ongoing basis. Whatever you delegated in the beginning, when you develop this system, you will have to re-examine and expand even furthermore. As your project grows, as your team grows, you're going to have more and more to delegate. Appreciation needs to be meaningful to your team. And it needs to be meaningful to you, as somebody already pointed out. You may want to have a discussion with your team to come up with a way to appreciate. For example, if you guys have a swag, maybe you can have a design competition for the swag where everybody can participate. That's just one example. Acknowledge and celebrate accomplishments. This doesn't have to be a public thing. Some people don't necessarily feel the need to be acknowledged publicly, but they do need to be acknowledged. And that is, you have to come up with a system where you can spend some time with them and acknowledge them. Never reward a volunteer before the task is done. Tickets. What are we doing when we offer discounted tickets? We're rewarding a volunteer before the task is done, aren't we? So there's the dilemma right there, right? It's kind of demoralizing to the volunteer if they're not aware of the level of commitment that is involved, and it's demoralizing to the rest of the team. So you really need to think in terms of when you're going to give a discounted ticket or a ticket for volunteering. It's not necessarily the only way you can attract people to come to participate with your project. So don't automatically assume that that's how they're going to come to you. Rituals and celebrations. A lot of people don't necessarily get turned on by swag, but they would love to be involved in some kind of a community ritual, right? Keep that in mind. This is like, it can be something so simple such as a potluck even. Have a potluck dinner it's a ritual. You know, it brings people together. They're able to kind of give to their community and kind of share their cooking talent, you know. But they spend time together and they bond a lot more than if you were to give them a swag. Okay? Then last but not least, you want to allow for graceful entrance and exit. You want to establish a supportive process of acculturation for your newbies. Again, a welcome wagon, you may want to have, like maybe one person in your team is really geared in that direction, like they really take your newbies under their wing. That is the person that is going to be your welcome wagon. Interview process, role or job description, even though these are your volunteers, especially for your leadership, you want to have that interview process and you want to have a little job description for them. Allow for gradual step up and down as opposed to falling from grace completely, right? So it's okay if one of your leaders says, right, a free fall. Right? So, and that happens a lot because again, you're just so excited. You're doing this, you know, nonstop, and you get to a point where you're like, you know, you have no other choice but to burn out. So you want to make it okay for your leadership to say, no, I want to do this smaller job now for maybe a year or two. It's okay to do that. You want to have that conversation. You also want to kind of allow people to gradually step up into a much more complicated, more involved role. Have the difficult conversation in a timely manner. This is, again, one of those really, really important big things that you as a leader, unfortunately, have the responsibility of doing. And the uncomfortable conversation can be somebody who is, you know, kind of affecting the rest of the team in a unfavorable way. You know, it's kind of bringing down everyone's morale somehow. It could be someone who you don't have much in common. You're feeling uncomfortable with this person. It could be personal. It could be, you know, something else. Whatever it is on, you know, your responsibility basically to address this as soon as possible. Don't let it fester. Don't let it get into a huge thing. If you need to bring a third person, a trusted member in your team into that conversation, so it's not just the two of you together, and make it happen. Make that conversation happen. Encourage new talent and avoid entitlement by setting expectation of a rotational term, right? Like a limited term. For example, let's say you have a council, right? The council can't go on and on for years on end with the same people. You need to bring fresh people on board, and so you need to figure out whether you need two-year term for the council, 1-year term, whatever it is. Make sure people know about this. And you may want to kind of also think about other roles in your team. Maybe there needs to be a limit. And then make it okay for people to take some time off. Okay, just go off and then allow them to come back on their own terms when they need to. Okay? All right.
What if, so specifically on the taking a year off, say someone wants to take a year off, and that was the person that had been sort of chosen to be the up-and-coming leader, and then suddenly you have this void where there's no one who's comfortable taking on that lead role in a given position.
Yep.
But the person who you wanted to be doing it suddenly isn't willing to do that.
Right.
And what if you're the person who wants to
You
do
have to
all?
kind of think in terms of, you know, when you schedule people, do you schedule just one person for a shift?
This would be the lead position.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
But
no,
let's
normally
say
we do like pairs of people on any given shift.
that's exactly what you want to do with your leadership. There's no reason why there should be only one leader. Granted, sometimes it's hard to find 2 people who are qualified, and it takes some time, right, to develop that. Sometimes one of your newbies kind of is the perfect candidate when somebody is about to leave because they have the right attitude, they have the right skills, and so you want to kind of you're observing your team, right? So you're kind of thinking always in terms of who else besides this person would be a good match for this particular role.
This was just a comment on the point about not rewarding people before they've completed the task. As part of throwing our decompression, we were rewarding volunteers who had put in a minimum amount of time with a ticket. And then we had people whose shift was at the end of the event. So our solution to that was to have them buy their own tickets, and then once they completed their shift, then they could get approval from the lead, and then they go back and get a refund.
This is in regards of the giving tickets to your volunteers?
Yeah, because there was the concern, because some people were showing up for an hour, they were, or they didn't even show up for their shift, and they already had been to the event.
And some
free,
teams,
so.
you know, some people require their volunteers to gift a year before they're even qualified for
That's
the
us.
tickets.
Yeah, that's us.
So
Important.
my question is, we've had problems with the burnout process of, we talk to the lead and we're like, you're doing a great job, you're having, you know, you're training your colleagues, you're training leadership, but then they still crash and burn even though we have that hard conversation, and they just, I mean, we had like physical exhaustion at the event for one or two people. And so, do you have any better suggestions of ways to tell, no, really, you're doing a great job, but don't push it so hard? You want to encourage them, but you also don't want them to feel the guilt, and it's real hard to find that balance with some people because they don't hear the, I'm doing this too much. They only
Remember,
have to do
yeah, remember you're in charge.
Yeah.
You're the one who delegates, right? And when you have your second in command and third in command, they're the ones who are going to delegate further, right?
Yeah.
By the way, your second in command needs, the first thing on their agenda is to find a second in command for themselves. Every leader needs to have that as their priority, so that there's always a pool of potential in the team, right? So you're the one who tells the volunteer how much they're going to take on. They're really excited, really, you know, they want to give it all, but you're the one who has to say no. So at least whatever that gesture is, needs to be a little firmer, right? And you need to also look at the job and delegate it even more. Break it down into smaller sections even more, so that it's not just this one person doing all this stuff. Okay?
Termy, to your left.
Hey, I just had a quick vocabulary item that came up in the event production seminars as well, but the term co-lead is being used a lot, particularly when talking about mentorship or assistantships or deputies. And it's really confusing to people because they see that as two people being the go-to person, which creates a lot of communication issues and logistical issues. But if it's like, if the instead, like they were using it even in event production and changed afterwards because they're like, yeah, we see where that confusion sets in. But if, particularly when you're talking about bringing on volunteers and teaching them and such like that, having a mentor, mentee, or a deputy or lieutenant, or instead of using the term co-lead, because co-lead is sometimes misleading and confusing and causes logistical issues.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, and this down here.
I just switched just over to using assistant with Apogea. And another thing is like, so we did see like our department leads burning out really bad, so we created daily leads. And then we saw they were burning out, so we encouraged shift leads. And we break them into shifts of like no more than, you know, 2 shifts back to back. And it works out much better. That also gives the department lead a chance to delegate some of those tasks around like information sharing and like creating the meetups and stuff before the event, which gives them more autonomy and ownership and makes them feel like they're having a lot more input on the team.
Yeah, it's true. People have a assumed association with a standard kind of commonly used title. And so when you give someone a title like that, they automatically have a tendency to kind of become a little too entitled, if you know, if you may. And if you come up with more creative role titles, then it actually helps kind of people to kind of be a little more generous with that. I think
Actually, this gal, and then her, and then
okay.
My question might be kind of odd, and it definitely falls in one of those things that I never realized was a problem until I took the liability and risk mitigation session. But they said that if volunteers are given a Coca-Cola, a T-shirt, that can be considered compensation and open your event up to a potential workman's comp claim. And that's sort of like okay, and then we worry about chickens falling out of the sky next. And I was just wondering, from a practical standpoint, how much of a consideration that should be or is for you guys?
I think one of the things that we're always doing is we're always trying to kind of inform our group or our people about the 10 principles. And a part of that 10 principles is gifting. You need to generously use that term with your team members so that they all understand that this is a gift, right? This is not compensation for anything. This is gifting. It's not barter system either, right?
Okay, I was scribing in that session, and so I asked some question, and I think this is a tricky one to answer, but ultimately, whether you've given them a Coca-Cola or not, there may still be a workman's comp claimable incident, so don't not give them a soda because of a concern about that. Like, we may be exposed to that for other reasons. That was sort of it was a little misleading in a sense, because but I think that their point was that almost anyone who's a volunteer could potentially, in some, God forbid, legal situation, claim a relationship that would qualify for that. So I don't want anybody to be concerned that they can't give sodas to their volunteers.
Can we get legal to chime in on that rather than us trying to?
Yes,
Let's
please.
do
I
that.
did not just give you legal advice. The recording captures that.
Okay, and
How much time do we
next.
have?
We have 5 minutes for the whole talk.
For
It's 5 to 10.
entire?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just go, just kind of take questions and comments.
To your point about don't name them co-leads, give them some tasks like volunteer scheduling lead or volunteer fluffing or appreciation lead. And then on site, you can switch off who's the lead of the day or the hour or whatever.
Who is next?
There was a lady in the back actually who's next.
The lady in the back.
We have leads that are the primary lead, and co-lead is like an under position.
It's used in actually because co comes from cooperative lead. So it means that you're sharing the liability and the responsibility when you use that term.
That makes sense. It's just interesting. I don't know that other people have, I guess, co-leads with a primary position. Is that kind of what you were saying?
No, it's just if you have 2 people responsible for something and they're co-leads, they're both fulfilling the same tasks.
You're actually totally illustrating his point.
Yeah, we have a semantics issue.
You're using it in a way that's assistant, but you're not calling it assistant, you're calling it co-lead, which is misleading because co-lead means you're doing the same thing.
Got it. That's intriguing. I never heard that idea before. And the other thing I was going to say for structure-wise is that we had a new position that's worked really well the past 2 years called support. And the support's like our internship, but it's also passive. So you
I like
can
that.
leads, whatever. So it's mentorship, but also passive advice. And people really love it, and that's great.
That's great. Are you
Okay, you
counting?
can go ahead first.
Oh, okay. You, then you.
There we go, perfect. So my question was actually with regards to recruiting for difficult positions, especially in a newer community. Like, it is tough to recruit for people to do ranger shifts, or harder even to do like a ranger lead shift, because the event is so short and the amount of work is so great, and everybody pays for a ticket at our event, and we do not. So people have a harder time being like, hey, I paid for a ticket, but then I also work the entire thing. So do you have like any strategies you can suggest for that? Like, one thing that I was thinking for just recruiting, like, and also like the scale of the event kind of has to match your kind of security and first aid team. And so like what I was going to try to do is for our decomp, even before we decide even the date, is to try to almost get the volunteer roster for those teams nailed down. Do you think that's going to be reasonable? Like, do you think that, or would that be like holding the community, like giving them like an ultimatum? We'll only hold it for 3 days if there are 16 volunteers signed up by whatever date, like for this particular team. Like, this, like what's
I'm hearing different questions all wrapped into one. So.
Well, that's right, because there's lots of ways to look at it. I'm looking for strategies to recruit for difficult positions.
Okay, strategies to recruit for difficult positions. the first thing is you want to invest a longer amount of training and mentorship for that. And there needs to be a buy-in from that person. You can't hold a carrot in front of them and say, you have to do this. People need to really want it, right? Make it inspiring and fun. There needs to be a reason why they're volunteering besides, being a ranger, right? They need to, this is about the experience, right?
I think I am hearing that you're asking, would it look like an ultimatum if I told the community that we're at risk of not having our event succeed because we're lacking this? And I think it's about how you put it to the community. I'm remembering from that thing in the desert when the whole porta potty vendor was ready to cut us off. And we asked the community very publicly to stop doing behavior, which we thought we could not control. But we found out by telling the community it endangered the success of the event, it made all the difference. I don't know if that lesson can be exactly applied here because I don't know enough about your thing, but I do think that letting the community know that this is a problem, but not so much in a, excuse me, you're not a whiny ass, but you gotta come off sort of more like encouraging versus like, hey, this is all fucked up, we don't have the right people. But
we can continue having this conversation after.
Just a quick suggestion, in our local community,
This is the last comment.
we hold trainings. So if you're having trouble getting first aid people, or you're having trouble getting security, you actually hold security license training where you provide a trainer that trains your community. You want to be a ranger, but you don't have, ranger training, enable them to be able to fulfill those positions.
I'm doing the ranger training. It doesn't always make it easy to recruit people, so.
It
helps a lot
if
they're trained, they know what they're doing.
If you're starting from ground zero, that might be a good place to start.
Well, you guys, thank you so much. Thank you all for participating in this discussion, and thanks to our volunteers and to our presenters.
Thanks to you guys, I made a whole list of notes that I pulled from you. I am learning.
Great.
Learning man once again.
And remember, volunteers@burningman.com if you have any questions or comments.
Yes, I want to meet you.
Please fill out the questionnaire. You guys, there's questionnaires on the table. Please fill it out.
If you give us feedback, we can make it better for you next time.
Yeah. You guys want to take photos?